What if one decision, one that you never thought you'd make, could turn your entire life upside down? Not just yours, but your family's, your friends, and the very foundation you've built your identity upon. I made such a decision, and nothing has been the same since. If you've ever stood at the crossroads between duty and desire, between who you are and who you could become, then this story is for you. My name is Claire. I'm 45 years old, a mother of one teenage son, and was married for 19 years to a man I once believed was my forever. But the truth is, the idea of forever began to crumble slowly, invisibly, until all it took was one spark to bring down everything I had built. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about emotional starvation, the weight of choices, and how loneliness can disguise itself in the most comfortable routines. From the outside, Ethan and I were the ideal couple. A beautiful home in the suburbs, vacations twice a year, dinner parties with friends, a son Owen who was excelling in school. But behind the pictures and smiles, our marriage was hollow. We hadn't been intimate in nearly 2 years. Our conversations were transactional. I was lonely, but I didn't know how to say it out loud. Daniel, Ethan's childhood friend, moved to our city and reconnected with him. Daniel was charming, attentive, and intuitive in a way that Ethan hadn't been in years. One evening when Ethan was out of town, Daniel came over to drop off something. We sat down to talk, and for the first time in years I felt truly heard. It became a pattern. Daniel would stop by occasionally, and our conversations went deeper. We talked about childhood dreams, disappointments, regrets. I shared more with him in 3 weeks than I had with Ethan in 3 years. The attraction grew in silence. One night, after a particularly heated argument with Ethan over something trivial, I broke down. Daniel happened to call. I invited him over. We sat on the couch in silence until I began to cry. He didn't say anything, he just held my hand. And it felt like the most intimate moment I had experienced in years. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. But in a moment of weakness and yearning, I kissed him. Just once. But that kiss burned into my conscience. I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't eat. I hated myself and yet craved more. The affair began slowly. Not with sex, but with emotion. With stolen glances, texts, shared smiles. Eventually, the physical followed. I told myself it was temporary. A phase. That I could stop anytime. But I couldn't. Balancing the affair and my family life became exhausting. I lied. I manipulated. I felt ashamed. But I also felt alive. I hated myself for needing Daniel, for looking forward to every message, every touch. I started noticing how kind Ethan still was in his own distant way. He brought me coffee in bed. He paid the bills. He never suspected anything. The guilt began to eat me alive. I felt like a stranger in my own home. When I missed my period, my world tilted. What if I was pregnant? Who would the father be? I cried in the bathroom, clutching a test. Came back negative, but the fear lingered, forcing me to rethink everything. I told my best friend Monica. Her face dropped. Claire, this won't end well. You know that, right? I knew. But I needed someone to know. I needed to speak it into existence. One night, Ethan and I had a huge fight over something simple. In the middle of yelling, he said, "Why don't you just leave if you're so unhappy?" And I screamed back, "Maybe I will." And in that moment, the truth broke me. I told Ethan the truth. Not everything, but enough. I told him I was unhappy, that I felt neglected, that someone else had made me feel alive again. He was silent for a long time, then said, "Is it Daniel?" He moved into the guest room. We stopped talking. Owen noticed. He became distant, angry. I tried to shield him from it all, but children always know. Daniel and I stopped talking. He said I needed to deal with my family first. I felt abandoned. I had chosen a path, and now I was walking it alone. Ethan and I tried counseling. We dug into old wounds. Talked about our lost intimacy. But the truth was, we had both stopped trying long before Daniel ever came into the picture. I started therapy. I picked up painting again. I joined a local book club. For the first time in years, I began living not as a wife or mother, but as Claire. Ethan asked for a separation. Not out of anger but clarity. He said he didn't blame me entirely. That we both lost each other a long time ago. We agreed on co-parenting Owen and he moved out. Telling Owen was the hardest. He cried. He screamed. He asked if it was his fault. I held him whispering, "It's not. It's never your fault." But I knew I had broken something sacred. Months later, Daniel reached out. He asked how I was doing. We met for coffee. It felt like a lifetime had passed. We talked, not as lovers but as two people with shared history. Slowly we rebuilt our connection. There was no affair now, only truth. Honesty. Intentionality. He supported my healing journey. He respected my pace. When Daniel and I kissed again, it wasn't fueled by guilt or secrecy. It was soft. Earned. I felt safe. Ethan and I signed the divorce papers. We cried. We hugged. We thanked each other, for the years, for the memories, for Owen. Daniel and I now live in a modest apartment. Nothing fancy. But every corner of it is filled with honesty. We argue. We laugh. We grow. Infidelity isn't about lust. It's about longing. About what goes unsaid. It's a mirror to our truest needs. I'm not proud of how I hurt others, but I no longer pretend I was happy when I wasn't. I made a difficult decision, and everything changed. But change, even painful, is sometimes the beginning of truth. I started journaling every day. The early pages were filled with regret, confusion, and guilt. But slowly my words shifted from self-blame to self-awareness. I realized I had been missing for years. Not just in my marriage but in my own life. Some friends distanced themselves after learning the truth. Others quietly stood by me. Monica was my rock. She told me, "You don't owe anyone a perfect story. You owe yourself the truth." One evening, Daniel opened up about his own heartbreak. He had been engaged once, left at the altar. That betrayal shaped him. It made me understand why he didn't pressure me for anything. We were two people trying to build something honest after being broken. Ethan came by one afternoon to pick Owen up. He asked if he could speak to me. We sat at the kitchen table, like strangers meeting again. "I'm seeing someone," he said gently. I smiled. "I'm glad." And I meant it. Holidays were hard. The first Christmas after the separation felt fragmented. Owen split his time. But Daniel made sure to step back, giving me space to handle things. That grace made me love him even more. Instead of mourning what was lost, I started new traditions. A winter beach trip. Game nights with just Owen and me. Daniel joined us later, but never imposed. He was a partner, not a replacement. One night I woke up gasping for air. A panic attack, my first. The guilt, the pressure, the weight of everything I had destroyed and rebuilt came crashing down. Daniel held me through it. "You're not alone," he whispered again and again. Owen started therapy. He began to smile more. Talk more. One day he said, "I know you and Dad aren't together anymore, but I can tell you're happier now. And I think I'm okay with that." My therapist asked me to write a letter to my past self. I cried while writing it. I forgave the woman who stayed too long, who wanted to be loved, who made a mistake but didn't run from the consequences. We sat in the park where we'd had so many honest talks. I said, "I'm scared to let myself be fully happy." He said, "You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing." It wasn't a romantic whirlwind. It was slow, intentional. Daniel brought his books, his cooking pans, his late-night jazz playlists. We carved out a new home together, built not from escape but from truth. One of the moms from Owen's school looked at me differently, whispered behind my back. It stung. But I reminded myself, they don't know my story. And I don't owe them the chapters they didn't read. I looked older, softer, but stronger. My eyes carried more history. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a villain. I saw a survivor of her own silence. Meeting Daniel's parents was nerve-wracking. His mom asked tough questions. Why should I believe this is real? I said, because it's not based on lies anymore. Only hard truths and love we chose. I still flinched when Daniel picked up his phone late at night. Not because he gave me a reason, but because I still carried wounds. He noticed. I'm not your past, Claire, he said. I'm your now. With Daniel's encouragement, I left my stagnant job and started my own home decor business. Scary? Yes. But liberating. For once, I believed in myself enough to leap. I wrote letters to Ethan, to Monica, to Daniel, to myself. Some I sent. Most I kept. But in those unsent words lived my redemption. I traveled to Tuscany, alone. I sipped wine on cobbled streets, painted sunsets, and wrote pages of poetry. I reintroduced myself to me. Daniel never made grand gestures. But one night after dinner on our balcony, he took my hand and said, I don't want to fix your past. I want to build your future, with you. I didn't cry. I smiled. Yes, I whispered, not because I needed him but because I wanted to choose him again and again. We decided not to rush the wedding. We lived day by day in truth, in rituals, in healing. Owen bonded more with Daniel over time, not as a father but as a respectful presence. I started writing a memoir, not for fame but for release. I called it The Silence Between Us. Writing was cathartic and raw. Years later, Ethan and I met for coffee. We talked like old friends. I forgive you, he said. I forgive myself too. And just like that, a weight lifted. I shared my story anonymously online. Messages poured in. Women and men saying, thank you for telling the truth no one dares speak. I realized then, this story was never just mine. Not everything was perfect. Some days were hard. Some wounds still ached. But for the first time in my life I lived in peace. Not because I made all the right choices, but because I stopped lying to myself. Have you ever had to choose between what's easy and what's right for you? Your story deserves to be heard. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's create a space where no one feels alone in their choices or their healing. If this story touched something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear they're not the only one. Subscribe to Veiled Desires for more powerful, raw, and life-changing stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications. Every story shared here is a mirror. Yours might be next.